On a quiet Tuesday morning at precisely 8 a.m., the city of Wagadu in Burkina Faso stirred awake to an unexpected sight. Military trucks rolled steadily through the streets, their engines low and deliberate, heading toward an unremarkable office building on the city's eastern edge. From the vehicles, soldiers stepped down in unison boots, striking the ground with the weight of purpose. Without a word, they entered. Their movements were swift, methodical. Inside, they uncovered stacks of documents, hard drives, and encrypted phones, the instruments of a covert operation. Outside, the sign above the door displayed the name of a telecommunications company. To passers-by, it was just another business. But the government knew otherwise. This was no ordinary firm. It was a front, secretly working on behalf of Israel to collect sensitive intelligence across the region. This raid was not a chance event. It was the opening move in a meticulously orchestrated operation. By 11 o'clock a.m., 6 more companies across the country, each tied to Israeli interests, had been struck. Networks frozen. Operations dismantled. Secrets seized. No public warnings, no blaring sirens, only silent, decisive precision. At the center of it all was Troy, Burkina Faso's resolute leader. For years, he had watched foreign influence grow in the shadows. On the surface, Israel's presence came, wrapped in offers of technology, defense contracts, and economic aid. But beneath the promises lay hidden strings: access to Africa's natural resources, political movements, and even migration data. Some companies, like the one in Wagadu, were merely the tip of an intelligence network reaching deep into the continent. The pattern was clear. Control masked as cooperation. That day, Troy decided enough was enough. At 2 p.m., he stepped before the press. No theatrics, no raised voice, only calm conviction. His words cut through the air. Africa is not your blind spot anymore. The message was not for local rivals, nor for neighboring nations. It was aimed squarely at Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The statement was followed by action. Troy announced the immediate cancellation of every defense and surveillance contract between Burkina Faso and Israel. It was not just a policy shift, it was a signal to the world. The era of quiet foreign intrusion in Africa was coming to an end. Across Burkina Faso, the message was clear: any organization tied to foreign intelligence had hours, not days, to leave. Diplomats suspected of secret operations were given until morning to pack their bags and go. Soon, the evidence of this purge began appearing online. Empty offices once run by Israeli-linked companies, rows of boxed computers, soldiers escorting employees out of fortified buildings. Trucks rumbled away, carrying crates of encrypted communications equipment, the tools of unseen wars. Troy had sought no permission. He issued no threats. He simply acted, and the world took notice. By nightfall, his defiance was echoing beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Mali halted all imports of Israeli military technology. Guinea paused its joint cybersecurity projects. Niger went further, launching an investigation into its own foreign-backed infrastructure deals, searching for hidden intelligence networks. In just 3 days, 3 nations had joined Burkina Faso's stance. The movement spread like a wave across the region, with others watching, ready to follow. Inside Israel, the reaction was sharp and unsettled. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called an emergency meeting. Leaked accounts from Israeli media described an atmosphere of controlled panic. Advisors scrambled for a response. One, in frustration, reportedly told Netanyahu, "This isn't just about Burkina Faso anymore. He's building a wall against us." They were right. This was not a single crackdown. It was the beginning of a doctrine. Troy called it counterintelligence. For sovereignty, a blueprint to ensure Africa's independence in the face of foreign manipulation. Its pillars were uncompromising: total transparency, Every foreign company or government operating in Africa would disclose exactly what it was doing, no secret agendas, no hidden clauses. Zero tolerance. Any group caught in covert operations would be expelled immediately. No warnings. No second chances. Collective defense. African nations would share intelligence, monitor foreign activities together, and respond as one. This was not about Israel alone. It was about shielding Africa from any power, be it Israel, the United States, or European states that sought to use contracts and aid as levers for control. For too long, Africa's riches, its gold, its diamonds, its oil had been mapped, priced, and claimed by outsiders. Its politics were monitored. Its leaders courted and pressured. Even rivalries between African nations had been quietly fueled by foreign hands to keep the continent divided. Troy voiced it without flinching. You funded our divisions. You mapped our minerals. It was more than an accusation. It was a declaration that the rules had changed and that Africa was no longer for the taking. You called us unstable when we refused your chains. With those words, Troy exposed a truth long buried beneath diplomatic smiles. For decades, African leaders had been urged quietly, firmly to sign away their leverage behind closed doors. The deals they accepted were dressed as aid, partnerships, and mutual growth. In reality, they served foreign powers far more than the African people. Troy was done playing by those rules. In Burkina Faso, the public response was electric. Crowds flooded the streets outside the presidential compound, not in protest, but in celebration. Young people raised banners high. Africa is not for sale. No more shadows. For too long, African nations had been treated like pawns in a global game. Agreements were inked in secrecy, decisions made far from public eyes. Now, the curtains were pulled back. Troy had made the quiet deals loud and shown that Africa could say no. The celebration was not just about pride, it was about hope. Generations had grown up feeling that their countries were run not by elected leaders, but by invisible hands abroad. Foreign officials in suits, carrying the mindset of colonizers. Troy's actions shifted something deep. He was not just a president, he was a voice. Across the country, people began asking what it truly meant to be free, not only from the colonial past, but from the modern powers that sought to control Africa through subtler means. In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's fury was tempered by frustration. Military retaliation was out of the question. It would ignite a global crisis. Diplomatic pressure was impossible. His envoys had already been expelled. Even his allies were staying quiet. The United States issued a hollow call for restraint and dialogue. France, a frequent supporter of Israel, said nothing. The European Union remained silent. They all knew Troy was not standing alone. He was the figurehead of a growing African resistance. Inside Israel, analysts gave the movement a name, the Troy Doctrine. They feared it could spread. Israel's arms sales, surveillance contracts, and technology deals brought in billions, and more importantly, provided access to Africa's mineral maps, migration data, and political networks. If Troy's model caught on, those profits and that influence could vanish. This was not a distant hypothetical. The spark was already catching. Reports emerged that 6 West African nations were forming a joint watch list of foreign companies accused of espionage or political interference. Israeli firms topped the list. Regional security agencies began exchanging intelligence, directly building an African monitoring network that needed no foreign oversight. For the first time, countries were uniting not just in trade or politics, but in the defense of sovereignty. Even the African Union began moving. Sources revealed they were drafting a resolution inspired by Troy's Stance 1, urging all 54 member states to resist covert foreign operations and reclaim control over their land, their wealth, and their future. The doctrine was no longer an idea. It was becoming a continental shield.